This is the primal scream of a dying regime.
Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're just not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish, in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
It's Monday, 17 August, year of our Lord 2026. Momentarily, we're going to go to McKinney, Texas with breaking news, but I'm going to start with the intrepid John Solomon, who joins us by phone. John, on Just the News this morning on the site, pretty big bombshell story about one of our favorite congressmen, Swalwell. What do you got for us?
Well, it's another reminder of just how intrusive China's efforts to infiltrate our political system are. We've talked over the last few weeks, thanks to the president's decision to declassify documents, and we know that they have China has taken more than 220 million of our voter files, which puts them in a position to interfere in our elections going forward. We know of the things they've done, the birthright citizenship scam, the marriage scam that was unfolded by the Justice Department a couple of weeks ago. They are relentless in their effort to influence politics, influence elections, and co-opt our country. And today we have another example, and one that we were never really given the full truth on. We've known for years about Eric Swalwell and this alleged Chinese spy, Fang, Christine Fang. But we were told it wasn't a big deal. As they got it in the House, it wasn't a big deal. The FBI decided to give Eric Swalwell a defensive briefing. No big deal. Nothing to see here, much like Hunter Biden's laptop. But when you get the real truth, and you finally get what the FBI knew, it's a pretty serious investigation. The FBI knew as early as 2014, so literally in the first 2 years of Swalwell's congressional career, that he may have been for sexual relations, illicit money to his campaign and to the place of that this Chinese national with deep ties to the MSS intelligence service in China had. And so how does that play out without anybody getting accountability? Well, there's quite a twist, quite a turn, quite a bombshell in these documents. It turns out during the early phases of the Swalwell-Fang relationship, the FBI was recruiting her team, a confidential human source, an informant. It's called a double-blind recruitment, meaning she did not know yet that the person she was dealing with was an undercover FBI employee and that the contract she signed was a cutout company controlled by that FBI employee. But they were checking her for suitability as a potential confidential informant. It's during that time that she's accelerating her relationship with Swalwell and eventually moving to a position to make conduit or straw donations to his campaign. She's a foreign national. She can't contribute. She provides money to other people, allegedly, to give checks to Swalwell's campaign. And so all of a sudden, the FBI realizes the person we're trying to recruit is actually engaged in criminal behavior. They shut down the confidential human source relationship with her, double-blinded as it was, and then they moved to a criminal case. And they had originally, the criminal case was looking at Swalwell in a conspiracy or in a bribery effort with Fang, that he was receiving money in return for placing her in the vetting of the case and focus on Fang. And then they have Fang on.
Yeah, I tell you what, I want to reboot. John, maybe we can get him on Facebook audio or something. You're breaking up, John, so this is too important. So let's try to get him rebooted. Breaking story about the compromise of Eric Swalwell, what the FBI knew about this, also working a double agent. And this entire time, I think Swalwell goes on to the House Intelligence Committee. And as you remember, in the first term, becomes one of the biggest critics of President Trump. A quite complicated story, but it shows you the deep state and guys like Swalwell and this radical Democratic Party, and people knew about this at the time. and nobody put a lid on Swalwell. So John Solomon is actually out on the road, and we're going to get him booted up and back up in a moment. Let's go to McKinney, Texas. John Aselton. So, John, there's this, how do I say this, a kind of a political crisis in McKinney, Texas, about, I guess it's the town commission of McKinney. It's 7 members. I think there's a recall effort starting, I guess, now on the show right now, or maybe you started overnight. What's the issue? Why are you and a group of patriots in McKinney taking the action to remove the entire city council, sir?
Correct. So we have a recall in place to recall 4 of the members, including the mayor. There's 3 that are up on the next ballot, and so it's redundant to recall them. But we've got a long line of grievances. It spans multiple issues. In general, there's a sense, and particularly in McKinney, that our elected officials no longer represent us. They no longer listen to us, and in fact, they just carry on their will as needed. And there's plenty of examples in McKinney, and so the residents and the citizens have had enough. And so we're using our civil power to say, we don't believe that we have confidence in you, similar to how you relieve a military commander. Once they've lost your trust, once you feel like you're not confident that they're going to be a good fiduciary for the citizens, that's it. And so we're enacting the civic process of doing the recall and sending a message that we do not feel that you faithfully can lead the people of McKinney, and we're going to do something about it.
So when you say leave and breach of fiduciary responsibility and all that, what are the issues? What did they do to show you that they're not living up to their fiduciary responsibility or not representing the people in McKinney? I mean, this is a pretty dramatic move. You don't often have recalls to try to recall mayors and essentially all the city council that is not up for re-election this year. So what is the cause of this?
It's a referendum on many issues. It's the cultural subversion of McKinney. It's the financial dealings with large infrastructure projects, real estate. We rejected 2 airport bonds as citizens, and the city decided to move forward with them. And then in response to the citizens continuing to outcry, hey, we voted twice against these bonds, the city turned around and sued us in Austin, Texas, about 200 miles away. Every citizen in McKinney was sued by the city to make sure that this thing goes through. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you look around in McKinney, and people just know, they feel it in their gut that things are wrong. Unfortunately, because we've had so many years of basically feeling like we have no agency over what's going on in our city. A lot of people have become passive, and so this recall initiative is to wake them up and say, no, you are not powerless. You don't have to accept the status quo. This is something that you can do. It's a referendum on public officials saying, you can't ignore us. You can't continue to do things that that we go and publicly, even going to city council meetings, planning and zoning meetings. You're hearing us complain about these things and ask for to just be heard. And ultimately, when they don't do that, that's why you get a recall, and that's why you get a recall that's this significant, where we're recalling effectively the 4 that are not up on the vote, the 3 are up on the vote. Everybody is going to be held accountable on the next election.
But I take it it's the mayor. They've been pretty up in your face. When you talk about cultural subversion, I mean, that's a little different than a difference over a bond issue. I can understand that. A difference over a bond issue, particularly where citizens say, hey, look, we don't want to lever up. We don't want to take the debt for this. You have a fight. But when you talk about cultural subversion, that actually, you're raising this up a couple of notches. What do you mean by that? When you say cultural subversion, what has the mayor and the 4 city council members that you're recalling, what have they done to basically enact cultural subversion and have not been responsive to the voters?
Well, there's quite a lot of new development in McKinney. We have a former mayor, George Fuller, who was mayor for 8 years. There was a referendum on the ballot previously for him to be able to serve 3 terms. It was rejected. The current mayor is Bill Cox. He's basically, Fuller's proxy in so many ways. And so, the residents of McKinney have endured significant changes with Fuller specifically. COVID. We had a citizen in McKinney sue Fuller over COVID restrictions, and then on top of that, BLM was in McKinney. We had significant cultural erosion with mass migration, and then corporate relocations, people coming from California, out of state. All of these were great economic growth developments. It's great for the workforce. It's great for, real estate development and growth. But at the end of the day, McKinney is your prototypical, it's an exurb suburban area of a major metro, which is Dallas. People move to play golf, to have families, for the great schools and things like that. The McKinney motto is unique by nature, and there's a giant oak tree on the motto. And, our sentiment today in the city is, you need to replace the tree with an apartment complex. And it's not unique by nature, it's unique by color of concrete. And so you're getting to the point where you're seeing mass development. You're seeing the erosion of, the small town feel. You go to Costco, you drive on the streets, and it just feels like a totally different area than it was even last year, let alone 5-10 years ago. And so all of this is culminating to a head, where, we're looking around and we're saying, okay, it's not something that we as residents have done. Who's ultimately responsible for this? It's the city council, it's the mayor, it's the people that we elected to listen to us and be good fiduciaries, and that's kind of where we're going there.
So much of this is driven by H-1B visas and or the federal and the state government's policy on basically this Islamic rollout in Texas. How is the mayor and the city council's cultural subversion, how are they responsible for stopping that? If that's what the issue is, it's H-1B visas. That's a total scam, but it's the Elon Musk of the world. It's the Amazons of the world. They're the ones that keep pushing it. The federal government, even the Trump administration, has done some marginal things like on charge them more, but the H-1B visa scam is out of control. You've had passing of Prop 10 to prohibit Sharia law in Texas. That's now going to be put on the ballot into law. Mm-hmm. You've had CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood designated as terrorist organizations by the governor, but there's a lot of work. You need a special session to actually put some teeth into that. We got a minute on this side. I'm gonna hold you through. What is the mayor's responsibility and the city council in stopping things that are at the state and federal level?
Well, the big one there is, we've seen that with corporate relocations, we've seen the labor arbitrage. We've had very high incomes. So the median income in McKinney, Texas is very high relative to the rest of the country. And with the large corporations that are moving in, they're not hiring locally. In fact, many members of my church, many members of my community are being laid off in favor of the foreign labor. And everybody knows why. But ultimately what you're seeing is, the American dream that was McKinney, Texas goes away when you have mass adoption and outright abuse of these legal migration vectors. And ultimately, the mayor and the city council, when they do when they have a corporation that comes in, they can be good stewards of the community and implore those companies to employ residents, to employ citizens, to give back to the community, be good corporate sponsors.
Hey, John, hang on for 1 second. We're just taking a commercial break. We're live from McKinney, Texas. John Aselton leading a recall effort of the mayor and 4 of the city council members. Back in the war room in a moment.
For justice.
Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
John Aselton joins us. We're trying to get Solomon up even as we speak. I'll go back to John as soon as we fix that. John Aselton, this is not simply about McKinney, Texas. The reason we start the War Room on a Monday with you is that this has massive implications for the jewel of the crown of the Union, Texas, but it also has massive implications for around the country. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the former mayor you talked about has already started an intimidation campaign. He has essentially said that citizens that signed this petition for the recall, they're going to get their addresses and they're essentially going to dox them. I mean, he's warned the saying, "Hey, we're going to know where you live. We're going to know who you are if you sign this petition on recall." Am I incorrect on that, sir?
No, you're absolutely right. So the former mayor also, it's somewhat interesting that you have a former mayor coming out with such divisive rhetoric. He's not on the recall. So why is he so upset about this? He's also tried to state that this is about Islam, and specifically stated that myself, so I've been formally doxxed, and as well as my recall committee, that if you sign this petition, you are destroying McKinney, that you are going, and if you write your name and write your address and you sign this recall, that there will be consequences. That is a public record. It's basically a communist tactic to say, I'm targeting you as the enemy, and I'm going to, be indemnified from any violence or any harmful or hateful actions that come against you, and let my useful cohorts go ahead and do that. We've already received threats. I personally have received death threats about this, all stemming from this Facebook post from the former mayor. But to go back to your other question, or your other statement, this is a blueprint for America. If you are unhappy with your elected officials, you feel like they don't represent you, you are not powerless. You have the agency. There is a city charter. There is an ordinance. There is something that you can go and find that you can leverage to make it so that you're sending a message. We need to be heard. And if you're not heard, we're going to use these procedures and we're going to make sure that we do something about it.
John, you're a Naval Academy grad, correct?
Correct.
And
so is my wife.
Your family has so is your wife. That's a twofer. You've got your family have a long history of serving this country in times of war and in combat, correct?
Correct. Yeah, my brother's a West Point grad. Both my parents were Army officers. We go back, heritage Americans before even the founding. So it's something that in terms of what's going on, we're not going to flee. We're not going to become passive. We're going to stake our flag and then defend our values, defend our freedom. And as a Christian man, I feel a calling that whatever comes, it's God's will. I'm going to do it without fear of retribution. George Fuller, say whatever you want, put my name out everywhere. I'm holding signatures and signature drives at my home.
John, there's already been some intimidation. I've gotten some Facebook things of people overall and kind of implied threats to Christian churches. Do you anticipate that's going to ramp up, sir?
I would absolutely anticipate that that's going to increase, particularly with my recall committee. And to give a little bit of context, every one of the recall committee is someone that goes to my church. We all have the same values. We've all been talking that we need to do something. We came together relatively recently to start this committee to send a message. Our names are now out there. Fuller named all of us, all 5 of us personally. And so we had a meeting last night to say, hey, what's the status? How you guys doing? What's been the messaging that you've received? And not one of us has been, immune from that Facebook post and those threats. But ultimately, because we all are Christians and we all do attend the same church, I feel pretty safe in saying that there's no way that you can disclaim, the Christian element to these hateful attacks.
John Aselton, are you going to back down on this fight?
Absolutely not. No, if anything, this resolves the conviction even more. I'm not one of those guys that's going to say, "Hey, I've been doxxed. I'm going to go with retreat. I'm going to pull my information down, my LinkedIn and all this other stuff." No, my address is publicly available. Come find me. My phone number publicly available. Give me a call. But in terms of this, no, this only emboldens our action.
John, where do people go? You get to the end of September to, I think, get 8,000 signatures. You already get about 1,000. Where do people go to sign the petition if they're residents of McKinney, number one? And number two, where do people go if they want to support you from around the nation, if they want to support you or get more information or talk to you? So give me first off where they go to sign the petition, how they do that, and then I want to have the second because I can already tell you the audience is quite jacked up on this.
This is great. McKinneyrecall.com is where you go to get our information. You can find signing locations. You can subscribe for updates. And then in terms of support, we started a SPAC, so we're collecting donations for that. So if you're called to support us and you're not a resident of McKinney, that's the best way to do that. And then also, because we've got this great media campaign organized, a lot of people, they're ostriches with their heads in their sand. Just getting the word out about what's going on for us. My hope is that it will empower other people in other Texas towns, in other Texas cities, and then around the country to say, take what we're doing, use it as a blueprint. And if you're unhappy at all, gather, organize, take a look at your charters and do what we're doing. And by you helping us be successful, we will in turn help you be successful.
John, you and your wife, Mrs. Aselton, make the Naval Academy proud in the Navy. So thank you for doing this. Patriot and a hero. Thank you, sir.
Thanks,
Appreciate
sir.
you. Okay, let's get everybody piling in. If we can make sure there were force multipliers today, let's get that out there. That is standing in harm's way. That is what courage is. Do I have John Solomon? John Solomon, back from McKinney, Texas to John Solomon. Swalwell, Fang. Here's a question I got. He was on the intelligence community for he's on the intelligence committee, sir, which is all the secrets of the nation. Basically, he was a senior member, and he was out hammering Trump every single day on MSNBC.
He was.
About Russian collusion, all of it. How did we not, this is what I don't understand. With all this information coming out, how did members of President Trump's FBI, President Trump's, Bill Barr, how were people not saying, hey, there's a problem here and we got to address this problem, particularly given the fact that this guy's got some of those sensitive secrets of the nation, sir?
Yeah, it's funny. He gets added to the House Intelligence Committee right around the time that this case is unfolding. Obviously, he is in there in the first 2 years. So as she is beginning her efforts to get close to him, Fang is, and beginning to compromise him. He's not yet on House Intel, but he makes House Intel in time for 2016 election time. But if one of the questions we have at the task force and that we're going to be pursuing is, what was Congress told? What was Nancy Pelosi told? What were the House Ethics Committee told? Did they know this level of information, or did the FBI sanitize this information, much like it's been sanitized in the public for a long time, so we wouldn't know the full extent and the full danger of Fang and the relationship? I mean, one of the big headlines here is that they knew she had close relationships with the MSS, China's notorious intelligence service, and that her parents were senior officers or senior executives in the MSS. This was not some wannabe in America. She had the relationships back in Beijing to make this relationship very, very dangerous. And I think we need to know what the FBI was telling Congress, and did Congress continue to leave them on the House Intelligence Committee with this level of information? That's what we're working to find out.
Just real quickly, and you're kind of going in and out. I understand that she was a double blind trying to be a double agent, but she's a princeling, right? She's from a central royalty. And the MS Ministry of State Security is a unique combination of the FBI and the CIA. It's an entity we really don't have here in the States, but it is the hammer. So her parents are seniors. She's now in China. Anything we try to do to flip her, she was essentially a Chinese spy, right?
That's certainly what they suspected, and certainly with that level of tie, they had some suspicion she was working at the behest of the Chinese government for good reason.
John, where do people get you? I know you're tough to communicate with the next couple of days. Where do people get you? Where they go to Just the News, the site, information for the task force putting up on the White House site, sir?
Yeah, whitehouse.gov under election integrity is where you find all of our documents. Under justthenews.com is where you find all our stories. And Jay Solomon Reports is where we have all of our social media.
And if I can recommend, if the audience goes to the White House site, we'll make sure it's got links up. The level of specifics in these documents will blow your head up. It is pretty extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it, John. So congratulations from everybody for the task force and the work you guys are doing.
Well, big thanks to President Trump and also the intelligence officers that are working with me. They are amazing.
John Solomon, thank you so much for joining us this morning to kick things off in the war room. This is not, Fang's just not some pretty young intern that kind of wandered in or somebody up on a staff that he met. This thing is much deeper and much nastier than that. And who knew? When did they know it? And why did they let Swalwell continue on getting the nation's secrets? Short break.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
I want to make sure everybody gets access to real big specials we've got with our sponsors. All Family Pharmacy. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Bannon. Use promo code Bannon25. You get 25% off. You don't have medical freedom totally until you get access to someone that you can have a licensed professional or pharmacist deal with you about the prescriptions that you need. I think they have over 600 now medications and drugs. Allfamilypharmacy.com/Bannon. Go to code Bannon25 for 25% off. Michael Kunzner, the team, is making this available to you. Please take advantage of it. Go and just check it out. If nothing else, 25% off. Of course, Chapter, now way over $1 million saved by the War and Posse, but most importantly, getting you into a Medicare plan that makes sense for you. 845 War Room, a direct hotline right to their consultants. It's totally free and no obligation. Hello, that's they've mitigated your risk. 845 War Room. Talk to them. The feedback we're getting from the War and Posse is just absolutely amazing. So check that out today. Jim Rickards. I get so much geopolitical and capital markets and all that to deal with you today, and thank you for helping us kick the week off. I can't, the Fang. Yeah, was she a double agent? Were they trying to get her a double blind? All that. So, but that misses the point. We know that her parents, she's Ministry of State Security. She's kind of a princeling. She was an active member of Ministry of State Security, which is their FBI and CIA combined. They targeted Swalwell. They obviously knew Swalwell had a problem with the ladies. This is why they did it. What's most disturbing about this is not the fact that some guy got honeypotted. I think that happens in Washington, D.C. This is what the security agencies on both sides are trying to do all the time. You saw this come up in what they try to do in the phony Russian hoax. But what's shocking is that they allowed it to go on and allowed him to sit on House Intel and get the highest level of security, and then him and Adam Schiff drive this. When I had to go to the House Intel committee, I think for 20 some hours, it was a star chamber because Paul Ryan had removed Nunez and had Trey Gowdy, who's kind of a bozo, running it, and Schiff and Swalwell ran the star chamber and took all of President Trump's people through there. It was a star chamber as bad as anything that was done by the Mueller Commission. The House Intel and Swalwell was the lead prosecutor in there in getting all the secrets from the U.S. government, knowing he had a relationship with Fang. Your thoughts, given your intelligence background, your thoughts, sir?
Well, the U.S. government intelligence says almost certainly knew she was a spy. When I, went for my security clearance, did my polygraph, it was called a full scope CI or counterintelligence. What that means is that nothing is off limits. Nothing is off limits, and it was grueling. Got through it, but when they want to drill down, they know how to do it. I've had lunch with Chinese spies in Washington, but I knew they were spies, and they probably figured out what I was doing. But the point is, you know what you're doing, you know what you're dealing with, and you act accordingly. Swalwell was reckless. Now the question is, why didn't they do something about it? Two reasons. Number one, he was actually pretty good on TV. Now he was lying through his teeth. He was a propagandist, but he was telegenic and he was good on, at the time, MSNBC and CNN and all those shows. So he was a tool, if you will, of the anti-Trump resistance. So he was useful in that sense. And besides that, the Communist Chinese Party had the Biden crime family completely compromised. I mean, we always hear about Hunter Biden in Ukraine, right? That's all true. But his Seneca partners and his other investments and joint ventures, they were more deeply embedded with the Chinese than they were in Ukraine, and getting a lot more money out of it, including Joe Biden. But of course, Hunter Biden and Big Jim Biden, they were the conduits through all these cutout companies. So the combination of the Chinese, were we compromised? Yes. But the Biden, we were compromised by the Chinese spy, but the White House was compromised by the Communist Party of China. And so they couldn't really do very much, or the Chinese would just release the evidence on the Bidens.
It beggars belief that we're going to find out as this thing's peeled back. And this is why I think there needs a special prosecutor on this, because you're going to get Pelosi. It beggars belief that other people in the chain of command did not know about this. I can't wait to see the documents that this was close. So people had to know about it. They allowed Swalwell for years to have access to the most sensitive intelligence our government has. They let him be a basically prosecutor to prosecute President Trump consistently every night on MSNBC, who now won't touch him with a barge pole, given all the problems he's got with being a sexual predator and all these issues. But right. The information was out there then about some of that, but definitely about being compromised. So it's unbelievable. Jim, I've got you here for other reasons today. Let me pivot to it. Economic warfare, the situation of our carrier strike forces, and now the situation in Korea. It seems like this is starting to metastasize and starting to impact the entire, which is the existential threat that is the Chinese Communist Party. And today basically in the 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock hour, I've asked Garland Favorito and that great team down in Georgia has an amazing presentation about the stolen election of 2020. We've asked them, we're basically going to take most of the 2 hours and I'll tee it up. But in a lot of this is about the CCP. The CCP created a bioweapon in the pandemic and COVID-19. They tried to steal the 2020 election away from President Trump. These people not just hate Trump and the MAGA movement, they hate the American people and they hate their own people, Lao Beijing. What is your sense of this Korean situation? How's it tie back into our readiness with the fleet and the economic warfare that Scott Bessent has just been deemed by the president to be the chief warlord of the economic war against the Persians, sir?
Right. So in 3 parts, let's start with Korea. What's going on with Korea is pure Trump, which is to say South Korea was not as supportive of U.S. intervention in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz as Trump wanted. They didn't really make any resources available. They could have. I don't even know if South Korea has an aircraft carrier, probably not. But the point is, they didn't really do anything. So, Trump keeps note and he says, all right, next opportunity, we're going to knock you down a little bit. And of course, he says, I don't want to annoy my good friend, Kim Jong-un. North Korea is what it is, but that's just Trump playing a little card, getting in South Korea's face. So the message has been sent. Let's see if South Korea gets the message. They have their own problems, by the way. South Korea's stock market has been collapsing. It ticked up a little bit in the last couple of days, but basically went through a major collapse. They have a dollar shortage. They have a lot of the same problems Japan has, although at least with Japan, the U.S. is throwing them a lifeline. Trump's signaling we're not going to throw South Korea a lifeline. So hopefully South Korea will get the message and come around in terms of supporting U.S. foreign policy. But in the meantime, they're in the penalty box. So that's what Trump is doing there. On the aircraft carriers.
Yeah, but hang on for a second.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. The 12-day war obliterated, and I'm quoting the president, total obliteration of the nuclear program. Okay. I understand his priority, and it's a priority I think a lot of people support. They can't get a nuclear weapon. That being said, part 2 started on February 27th. Let's just be blunt about it. This was bad information, bad intelligence fed by the Mossad and Netanyahu that said, and he had Lindsey Graham skipping around on video, that, hey, if you hit them with 5 or 6 days of strategic bombing, it's going to collapse. They're going to come out in the street like they did in January, and they're going to overthrow their government. This was a decapitation move, okay? This because you can go look at the target set of his first days. That's a decapitation move, and guess what? The Persians hit back, expanded it to the after the Israelis did, strikes on the oil, on the gas fields in Qatar, all of it. The center of gravity of battle shifted to the Persian Gulf and now to the Strait of Hormuz. The Koreans got their hands. Look, the government over there right now is more CCP aligned. We don't love that government whatsoever, but the South Korean people have been, if you go back to the Korean War in Vietnam, I mean, they've been a great ally of the United States and stood in the breach in some very tough times, including in Vietnam, where they actually sent combat troops and did some fighting. They got their hands full. Japan, Korea, and yes, sure, they sent naval vessels, but I don't know why we're bitching at South Korea when NATO hasn't done anything. You got the Royal Navy, you got the French Navy, you got the Italian Navy. We've been paying for these guys forever. They haven't given us anything. The Strait of the Suez Canal and Red Sea, that ain't Korea's problem. That's Europe's problem, and they got nothing. This is why we're so stretched out. So to ding them at the very moment that we have up-tempo, these are not exercises. These are preparations for an invasion of Taiwan. I don't see the strategic logic when we have so many deadbeat allies, including the Israelis, America's greatest ally, that continue to drag us in here. I mean, Kushner had to go over and try to get their attention on Gaza. The President Trump's got a plan, and he wants to fulfill it, and we don't want to go back into a shooting war in Gaza. So I understand that these guys didn't step up and help, but that's kind of marginalia, given that we have an existential threat, and we have Japan, we have South Korea, we got the Philippines, we got some pretty good allies, but they have to know we're committed. And one way to show you're committed is not to pull the carrier out, the one carrier battle group you've got in the Western Pacific, and send it through Malacca back to the North Arabian Sea. Somebody's got to, there's got to be some logic to this, and right now there's not logic, and you can't argue. It's about their nuclear program. Their nuclear program is totally obliterated. The other secondary attacks have done even more. Maybe now you have some special forces from the Israelis that can go in and clean up the dust. But, I mean, we're making major geostrategic moves, and I just don't understand where this all ties together on the logic of it, sir.
Yep. No, I agree, Steve. Look, I spent a lot of time in Korea. I have a lot of friends there, friends of mine in Korea about my age. They tell me that they learned English watching Armed Forces television. I Love Lucy. I mean, that's how, and they're very, very pro-American. So I agree with that completely. I'm not saying what Trump's doing is a good idea. I was just trying to explain the White House logic, how Trump thinks about it, which is, you hit me, I hit back. Whether hitting back is a good idea when we need South Korea and Japan and Taiwan, for that matter, the Philippines, to contain China. I don't think it is a good idea. I was just trying to explain how the White House is thinking about it at the moment. The aircraft carrier. I mean, we have enough. We have enough aircraft carrier strike forces. The idea of rotating it makes sense. So let's get the George H.W. Bush in there, and George H.W. Bush, and let's give the Abraham Lincoln a break. The other aircraft carrier force is there. So but we are moving right now to financial warfare and asymmetric warfare. We've got a little bit of a timeout in Iran. It suits both sides. Iran will take time to build up their drones, rehabilitate some of the missile launchers, repair some of the infrastructure damage we've done. The U.S. actually needs to restock the arsenal. We're extremely low on the THAADs, Patriot anti-missiles, Tomahawk cruise missiles. The White House is saying we got plenty. Not really. Not if you have a confrontation in China. So, but that's not like making automobiles on an assembly line. Those things, yeah, there's a process, but those are really very delicate weapons. Need a lot of hand tailoring, if you will. There's an assembly line process, but it's very very intricate, and it's not when you shut it down, which they did. You can't crank it up right away. It's going to take a while. So we're rebuilding our arsenals. My expectation is we're going to see. There's no formal ceasefire. The ceasefire is over today. No one has talked about renewing. We're not going to have another ceasefire, but we're basically the two sides are going to take a time out, probably through the election, and then we'll see what happens after that. The U.S. will restock a little bit. But that doesn't mean Iran's going to give us a break. They're still going to keep these Strait of Hormuz closed.
Hang on 1 second. I want to hold you through the next break. Plus we've got Jack Posobiec is also going to join us. Rickards, it's got a special. Go to rickardswarning.com. Rickardswarning.com. Get the flagship strategic intelligence for $17.76. You don't love it for 3 months. You don't love it, Jim will give you your money back.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay. Strategic intelligence, $17.76 for 3 months. If you don't love it, talk to Jim and give you your money back. Predictive analytics. You'll love it, though. But just check it out. That's a low-risk opportunity is what we call it. Also, we just got out of McKinney, Texas. We're going to have much more about that in other cities in Texas. This is why Patriot Mobile is so important. 972-PATRIOT. Call right now. You're going to get somebody with the East Texas accent. If you feel in the mood, have a prayer session. They will also talk to you about why it's the best phone service in America, and they've done so much. I think it was almost $3 million last year. They contributed to patriotic causes. 972-PATRIOT, Patriot Mobile, the best. Jenny's story and Glenn's story, two of the best. And she's a fighter, grassroots leader down in Texas, does so much. Poso, the fleet, the carrier battle groups, the Pacific, Korea, a great ally in Korea. And look, Korea's now got a CCP-aligned government, and they're not helping out much in the Persian Gulf, Hormuz. I understand that. But they got their own problems. But the South Korean people are as good as you can get, and they have been a great ally to the United States. Your thoughts about all this, sir?
Well, Steve, I mean, I certainly would push back on those comments because the South Koreans have been there for the United States throughout the entire war on terror. They were with us in Iraq. They were with us in Afghanistan. And now, while we can certainly sit here and say everything we want about the opinions on the strategic decision to engage in those operations the way that we did, but to say that the South Koreans haven't been with us for decades at this point, it's just not true. And the South Koreans have been with us probably more than any other ally in the Middle East. When it comes down to it. And so at this point, when they're saying, hey, we want to focus on home because we see the CCP, we see the dragon unfurling its coils right next to us, that's also understandable. But Steve, let's also understand the case in point here that the U.S. is dropping coverage in the Pacific. Remember, we sat here for months and years, right? Throughout the entire interregnum when Biden was in power, we said, look, Joe Biden was put in power by the Chinese Communist Party, John Solomon and President Trump and Bulldog Bill Pulte have got the documents now to say that it was, in fact, China that interfered in the election to help Joe Biden win. And we said that they want, ultimately, China to be able to take over our systems, China to be able to take over our elections, China to be able to take over our financial system. And a key element of that is China dominating what? First, they want to dominate South Korea. Oh, look, now they're already doing that politically. They want North Korea to have a nuke. Oh, look, North Korea does have a nuke. Okay, got that. Then they want to be able to take Taiwan. That'll be next. Then they want to start dominating Japan. They're already infiltrating Japan, and don't even get me started on Australia. Plus, they don't want anybody looking at Shizhong Li. They don't want anyone looking at the Wuhan Institute of Virology or all of these things. And guess what? Nobody's looked at that. No consequences whatsoever for the Chinese Communist Party. And in addition, what are we doing? Well, rather than pivot to Asia, look at the third island chain, the second island chain. No, we are actually de-emphasizing Asia. And again, I'm just talking in terms of materiel, right? I'm talking about realpolitik. The THAAD systems have been stripped out of South Korea. Those interceptors, the PAC-3s, those are all being sent to the Middle East. Now we got the carrier, we got the Washington is being sent over to the Middle East from Japan. And so, yes, I think it is rightly so that there are our allies and the freedom-loving people in the Pacific saying, wait a minute, where's the United States? Because they ain't here.
No, this whole thing, this big effort, Obama tried to do the pivot to Asia, but I keep saying the three biggest, most powerful entities are the Federal Reserve, the CIA, and CENTCOM. Obama tried to do the pivot to Asia. What did we get? One Marine brigade, 4 deployed to Darwin, Australia. That was it. President Trump had a huge effort to do this in the first term. Now it looks like, the gravitational pull of the Middle East, which I say is a sideshow, is now got us back into a reverse pivot from Asia when we got to prioritize Asia, particularly if you're going to have hemispheric defense, because you can't have it both ways. If you're going to have hemispheric defense, the Central Pacific is the strategic pivot of the United States as a hemispherically. But that's the three island chain support. You know who understood this? The great giants of the late 19th century. McKinney, that whole crowd. That's what manifest destiny is. The Central Pacific is the pivot, like McKinder's Central Asia is the pivot. Go ahead, sir.
Just to, because I know when we talk about that sometimes, we use a lot of these terms. I want to make sure people understand what we're talking about. We're talking about the island hopping campaign of World War II. We're talking about those islands from Midway on out, Coral Sea, et cetera, that those create defense in depth for the United States. Why? So that another Pearl Harbor can't happen, so that the Chinese Communist Party cannot conduct another Pearl Harbor the way that the Japanese did in 1941. And so the idea being that we're not talking about occupying and going over and conquering any of these countries. No. But what do? You want to keep the Chinese in a box. You want to keep the CCP in a box. What do? It's put them in the Chinese finger trap of South Korea and Japan.
Hang on.
Build up South Korea, build up Japan.
Yeah.
Boom. CCP will not be able to get out of the first island.
And this is, if you want to stop forever wars, the giants of the 19th century in the United States understood this. Manifest destiny did not end at the coast of Oregon, Washington, and California. This is the whole reason for Alaska, the strategic nature of Alaska, one of the most strategic parts of the world, but also the Central Pacific was a barrier. That's just like McKinder's, the Central Asia is to the world island. This is why, Napoleon and Hitler and the Swedes, everybody has fought over that for decade after decade after decade. That ain't the United States fight. We ain't been fighting there. That's one of the reasons we have to extract ourselves from places like, wait for it, Ukraine and Iran and Persia, okay? In the middle, that's why Middle East is a sideshow. Central fact, hemispheric defense from the Arctic to the tip of South America. That's Central Pacific. Those giants, this is why we had the Philippines. This is what, go ahead.
Perhaps the corollary of the GIUK gap of Greenland.
Amen. This is why we fought back across the Pacific, because what had happened before World War II in the 20s and 30s, we kind of rubbed up on each other. Of course, it's interesting, Jack, that we cutting off the oil.
That's led to some interesting consequences in the past.
Okay, I've got Jack's going to stick with us. Jim Rickards is going to stick with us. I have Jessica Vaughn from CIS, Center for Immigration Studies, and Natalie Winters is going to join us. Jeff Stein has got an amazing report from the Washington Post about what's going on in the labs, in the frontier labs of artificial intelligence. Even the tech bros, the second and third level, are getting the vibe shift is pretty apparent. All next in the War Room.